We're continuing our series on faith. And up to this point, we've been talking about faith as it pertains to us, pretty much in present tense or in our lifetime tense. So far, when we've talked about faith, we've talked about things that we are believing for or things that we hope will happen. But most of the times over the last couple of weeks, when I've been talking about faith, the scriptures I'm talking about, it it meant to me that I could hope and I could have faith for things now. I could have hope for things that are not seen, but I see them happening um, sometime in the next maybe few years, or even if they're several years off. I've been talking about things that I will actually see before I die. Today, we're going to talk about another side to faith, another version of faith. And this is faith that you believe for things that you don't actually see in your lifetime. So, we're going to be talking in Hebrews 11, verses 13 through 16. And let me read it in the NIV to get us started. It says, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. So this, let me keep reading. I have an explanation here. The writer reflects on the patriarchs like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Sarah, who died still believing in God's promises, even though they didn't see their fulfillment in their lifetimes. They saw God's promises from a distance, meaning they trusted that God's future blessings, like the coming Messiah and the heavenly city, would eventually come true. Their faith was not dependent on immediate reward. True faith looks forward in hope even without immediate results. That's difficult for us, especially in 2025, because we are used to getting everything pretty fast. You think not long ago, whenever the microwave oven was invented, it meant that you didn't have to wait hours for a hot meal. You could just put it in the microwave, and within minutes, sometimes even within seconds, you can have a warm meal. You can go from cold to hot to delicious the way you like it right away. We're used to that in nowadays. If you think about the fact that even the computer, whenever it came on the scene, and I don't even remember exactly when it was. I guess it was the late 90s, early 2000s, something like that, somewhere between 2000 and 2010, somewhere in there, broadly, there became a faster version of internet speed. I remember the first generation of computers, and you got the and then you get the you've got mail, and if you were going to send something or receive something, it took, to us then, it wasn't that long, but to us now it seemed like a long time, like dial up internet. But where we are now is instant. And if something is takes a more than a few seconds to load, it's considered slow, and it's a reason to complain to your network. If your phone, if it takes you, say, 45 seconds for a text to go through or for a text to come through to you, you would think something is wrong. We are used to things happening and happening fast. We're the microwave generation. We don't expect to have to wait on things. And this is true of this and our faith. Even we would prefer it if things happened sooner than later. Let's put it that way. We would rather the things we're believing for happen sooner than later. But I've been talking about the last few weeks that, like, even things we have to wait on, when they finally happen, what a great occasion that is. That something, like, even if it's something you've been waiting on for 10 years, after 10 years, you finally get that, oh my gosh, I finally saw what I believed years ago. Um, but what happens when the miracle, or whenever what you're believing for doesn't happen while you're alive? What if it's like these people that they waited and they held on for all their lives and never actually saw what they were hoping for? In verse 14, these faithful people admitted that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. Their perspective was eternal. They weren't living for earthly comfort, but had their eyes on something greater. This shows they were searching for a homeland not of this world. Faith gives believers a pilgrim mindset. This world is not their final home. Then, if you look at verse 15, if the patriarchs had wanted to return to their old life, example, Abraham going back to Ur, they could have, but they didn't. Their hearts were set forward toward God's promises. Key idea: genuine faith doesn't retreat, it presses on towards God's future. And if you think about that promise that God gave Abraham, that his descendants would outnumber the stars in the sky or the sand on the beach. Well, he never saw that, but he believed it in faith and was willing to spend his life pursuing what God had put in his heart. And he died with that hope. He didn't die hopeless. He died with that hope that it would come to pass, that it was going to happen eventually, even if his contribution to it was a minor part of it, because the substance of it would come long after he lived and died. And I wonder if we are comfortable with spending our lives with the idea that we won't see what we're hoping for, but our grandchildren will. What if what I'm doing today isn't for me to see? I mean, obviously, there's going to be certain things that I see. There's going to be certain things that I can see that God has used me to do this or that in my lifetime. But if you think about the fact that there's some people in each family that end up being the very first ones to serve God with all their heart, the first one to profess that I've decided to follow Jesus, no turning back. From this day forward, I am spending the rest of my life serving God and chasing after what He put in my heart, what I believe He promised me, and I believe He promised me that my family will now be a family of God, that my kids will serve God and my grandkids will serve God, and it would be great if we saw that now. But think about the impact that is made when there's generations of people serving God. What if when there's third and fourth and fifth and sixth generations of preachers and pastors and worship leaders, or just a family that loves and serves God and goes to church and contributes to their community as Christians? The full fruit of that is years and years and years in the future. But I wonder if we're okay with that. Are we okay with not seeing the fullness of what we're hoping for if what we see by faith is enough? Will we die frustrated? Will we live frustrated because we're living like, okay, surely any time now I'm going to see this come to pass? Surely any time now I'm going to get the breakthrough of taking my family to a different place financially. What if it takes a few generations for things to really turn the corner? What if your family has a history of, I don't know, you can fill in the blank. What if there's been generations of addiction or generations of just not believing in God? Forget about serving God, but not even believing God is real, that He exists. But what if your family is an atheist or they're agnostic? They just don't believe anything. What if it takes 2 or 3 generations of people serving God for it to really stick, and then your family is known as people of God? That person that first said yes to Jesus, the person that first walked down the aisle, raised their hand, and surrendered their life to Jesus, and then maybe went back to their family and their immediate family, they told them that I got saved last night. I believe that Jesus died for me. I'm going to serve him for the rest of my life. And that family, the initial family, they start serving God. But what if it takes 3 generations for it to really be that? Oh, the Smith family, they're a godly family. They are full of godly men and women and cousins and aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters. They are known as a family that serves God. I believe for me, I need to do a self examination and start thinking more eternal and not immediate. As a husband and a father, there's certain things that I would love to see in my lifetime. I would love to see my kids do certain things. I would love to see them achieve certain things. But what if I'm just a piece of the legacy of my family, a string, a part of from one generation to the next, passing the baton and running as far and as hard as you can, and then passing the baton and then moving on? I wonder if I'm okay that there are certain things that I won't see, that I'm 50 years old, 50, I'll be 53 in August. And there's certain things that I have to think about that my kids, because I started with Katie and them as an older, I say old. I wasn't in my 20s or 30s when I had Kingston and Lyric and Violet. I was in my 40s, and now, somewhere in that decade is when they were all born. And so I'm going to not make it till they're 60 and 70. Generally, I mean, I guess it's possible I could live for 100 years, but there's going to be a big portion of their life that I'm not around for. But the hope is that I will have run my race, that I would finish my course with joy, and that I would pass the baton, and then my grandkids will pick up the baton from my kids and keep running after God. And man, what is possible with yet another generation of God fearing people, loving God and loving their spouses and loving their kids and serving their communities? What is possible? And some of it I'm not going to see. And so to me, that's a challenge for all of us in this faith journey, yes, that we believe, and there's things that, like we've talked about, faith is the evidence of things not seen. It's like, I believe we are supposed to be hopeful and believe that God is going to do great things now and soon in the future, someday while we're alive. But God is going to do even more after we're gone. And so maybe we should spend more time. I'm not saying spend all of our time thinking about, 100 years from now, God's going to do this. But I think that it would help us to factor that in to our faith journey, to factor in the fact that we are supposed to just be carrying on what people have done before us. Um, my father in law, Dan, has talked about the fact that he inherited many things from my mother in law's family and their heritage of serving God and being Christians. But in his family, he didn't grow up that way. So, in a lot of ways, this generation of my wife and her sister and her brother and their kids, this like they're just starting to get some momentum as far as generations serving God, like with the Burris side. Um, and hopefully, 4 generations from now, you'll look at that family line, and they'll be able to trace it back to Dan Burris. And he decided that he was going to serve God, and he was going to raise his family, and he was going to go to church, and he was going to serve at church, and he was going to become a worship pastor and a pastor and preach. And 3 generations from now, with my kids and all of our kids and cousins, and it will just be a strong heritage. But it had to start somewhere. And so there's going to be certain things that my father in law is going to have to just see it by faith and believe that, like the fact that he said, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord, that the legacy will continue and it will strengthen in time, and that there will be some of that he won't see. And that's okay, that he's done his part, that we do our part while we're here. And you think about those people in the Bible, like all of the things that God promised them. God promised them a promised land, and all these things those generations died in faith that they wouldn't see it. I mean, you think about the children of Israel, the ones that were told that they would not, because of their unbelief and disobedience and serving other gods, that they would not go into the promised land, but their kids would. And so you think about dying that close to the promised land and really being the ones that were supposed to go in but didn't, but their kids did. And on it went, and here we are. So, yeah, and thinking about this last night, I was spent some time thinking and praying about it, and then it just made me think of a person. I mean, it's easy to obviously look back in the Bible in those times and the generations of people that had faith for their generations, that and they saw these miraculous things happen long after they were gone. And it just made me think of somebody in more current times that had faith for something that could happen in the future, but never actually did see it in their lifetime. And all of you know who I'm talking about, because I'm talking about a person that had a dream. Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream that things were going to be different someday in the future. Things were going to change. That his kids, uh, they would hopefully see something by faith. They would see something different than him. And obviously, he died tragically. Like, if he would have lived, he there would have been a lot of it that he could have seen, but because of that he was killed, he didn't see it. But he still had faith, and he put action with that faith to go out and to proclaim. And so I just wanted to read a little bit of this famous "I Have a Dream" speech. We've all heard it. But I just, in this context, I just wanted to think us to think about the fact that this man had a dream, and by faith, he could articulate it eloquently. He could articulate what his dream was and what his faith was that would happen someday. And a lot of it has happened. And my family is part of this faith that he had, this dream that he had actually coming to pass. And so let me just read a little bit of it. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. And we all know that famously in the end, but he gets to the crescendo of this message, he says that we will all together sing words of the old Negro spiritual: free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. But he didn't see that dream come to pass. He fought for it, he died for it. But what a contribution that he made to the freedom that I enjoy. The fact that I have a place at the table of leadership in places that he couldn't. He couldn't be a pastor or a leader in some of the spaces that I am able to now. He couldn't. As great as he wasn't allowed to sit at the tables, to enter some of the rooms that I'm able to with ease. But his dream and the fact that he fought for it and died for it, it matters. Generations later, it matters. So I'll end with that. I mean, we're still going to keep going with faith, and this is a little bit of a, I don't know, you can consider it going down a little bit as far as excitement of faith, and I'm going to see this thing come to pass. And if I just stay in there, if I just fight and I just keep believing, it's going to happen. I believe it. I can see it in my head. We've talked in the last weeks about the things that I've gotten to see that I was uncertain. I went through seasons of uncertainty, but they weren't for very long when you think about it in this context, that I fought for things, even if they took a couple of years. It only took a couple of years. Or there's been seasons when I fought and I believed for a couple of months, but it only took a couple of months before the miracle or the breakthrough or the opportunity came. And that's awesome. But the challenge that I have for me and for you today with this text, with this passage, with these verses, is to understand that what we are doing and what we are fighting for and believing for is eternal, and it goes on beyond us. And we need to be people of faith and believe and declare and live the best that we can, but understand that there's going to be some things that our grandkids see that we don't. but that's okay. That's part of the journey. Someday there'll be great grandkids of mine that will not have ever even met me, but hopefully the story of what I did to serve God will pass on and they will know. I heard that I had a great grandpa and his name was Jamie. His name was Willie James Davis III, but they called him Jamie. But he was a drummer and he became a preacher and he led people in worship and he led people in preaching and he served God with all his heart. And he my other grandpa, Kingston, was his son, and he taught him and encouraged him, and he became Grandpa Kingston became this great man of faith and this great man and Violet and Lyric and Mariah and man, they're these stories that we've heard about them, but Grandpa Jamie, he did his part. He passed the baton. He passed the baton from his dad and his grandparents. That's faith. I can see that. Those are grandkids that I'll never meet, but I can see them. I can see them afar off, serving God with all their hearts. And hopefully my life will be a part of that. Even in my mistakes, even in the things that I've tried and failed, it's all part of, by faith, playing my part. And then for generations to come, God is going to use what I've done in my lifetime. Let me pray for you. Lord, thank you. Thank you that as great as we hope to do in our lifetimes, you're going to do even bigger and better things after we're gone. But what we do won't be forgotten. It won't be for nothing. If we serve you with all our hearts, give it all we've got, we'll play a part, just like the children of Israel, just like Moses, just like Abraham and Isaac and all of those people, the patriarchs of our faith that died with a dream, but we're living that dream, Lord. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for our rich heritage before us and after us. We love you, Lord.